The impact tremor rattled the mugs on my workbench and sent a cloud of lubricant vapor snaking out of the ceiling vents. I barely looked up. You live long enough on a dead rock like Oris 9. You stop getting excited every time something falls out of the sky. Usually it's junk, satellite debris, scrap haulers with bad brakes, or once memorably, a retired pleasure yacht that still had glitter cannons active on impact. That one took a week to clean up. I wiped my hands on a rag that had definitely seen better decades, peered through the oil-streaked porthole, and muttered, "Please don't be on fire. I'm off incineration duty until Tuesday." Outside in the dust-fogged basin beyond my shop, something long and gleaming lay half buried in rock, still steaming. No visible insignia, no distress beacon, just a sleek, battle-scarred hulk that looked like it had been carved out of midnight. Of course I went to check. That's the rule in the mechanics code. Anything that looks too expensive to be here is either valuable salvage or trouble with a capital plasma burn. I brought my stun spanner just in case, and a sandwich. I hadn't gotten within 10 meters of the wreck before the hatch blew off and a figure staggered out, coughing through the smoke. She stood tall, at least by my short and perpetually oil-smudged standards. Her armor was cracked down one side, scorched purple at the joints. And though her silhouette was unmistakably human, her ears rose long and tapered from beneath jet-black hair, twitching faintly like antennas set to a forgotten frequency. "Friendly?" I called out, offering the universal gesture of peace, 2 hands held up in a visible sandwich. She looked at the sandwich, then at me, then at the sparking wreck behind her. "Do I look like I have the luxury to be unfriendly right now?" "Sarcasm detected," I said, nodding appreciatively. "That's step 1 in the healing process. Come on, my shop's that way. If your armor explodes, I charge extra." She didn't smile exactly, but one of her eyebrows made an interesting move. Inside the workshop, I cleared the bench, shoved a pile of drone legs aside, and gestured for her to sit. She hesitated like maybe the metal stool would bite her. Her armor creaked when she finally settled. "I'm Ren," I said. "Mechanic, occasional toaster whisperer, you." She looked around the shop, clearly unimpressed by the rust aesthetic. "Vera," she said after a pause, "just Vera. No family name, title, affiliation with any interstellar armies or doomsday cults I should know about. None that concern you." "Fair enough," I said, eyeing the armor's core socket. It was fried, like someone had poured liquid lightning through it. "But your armor's very chatty," just whispered primary user authorization breach at me. I told it you're authorized. "Well, it's going to need therapy. And probably a coolant flush. This thing's built like a diplomatic escort suit, but reinforced like a skirmisher shell. Hybrid class." She nodded slowly, then winced. Her side was bruised. Either the armor had absorbed too much impact or she had. I gestured toward the medgel cabinet. "You want a patch?" She eyed the container like I'd offered her a live beetle. "I'll heal." "Suit yourself. But if you pass out and faceplant into my fusor coil, I'm not scraping royal cheekbone off the floor." A silence stretched between us. I worked, prying open the chest panel, running a scanner over the internal nodes. She watched me like a hawk, but not the paranoid kind. Curious, sharp, like she wasn't used to anyone else getting their hands dirty around her tech. "I've never seen circuitry like this," I muttered. "This isn't just advanced. It's what is this, organic interface mesh?" "Thalassari biotech," she said flatly. That gave me pause. The Thalassari weren't just advanced, they were picky. Arrogant too, if you asked anyone not Thalassari. Their tech didn't exactly get handed out to backwater mechanics who fixed vending bots and personal hover boards. I leaned back, wiping sweat from my brow. "You're either someone very important, or someone who stole something very important." Vera met my eyes then, and her face was unreadable. "I didn't steal it, it's mine." "Well," I said, turning back to the armor, "that makes me someone very important. Because I'm the guy who's gonna stop this thing from melting a hole through my floor." She didn't reply, but she stayed, for hours, watching. occasionally offering a cryptic note about which circuits needed syncing or which energy pattern to avoid unless I liked surprise naps. We didn't talk much. At one point she asked what humans used tiny brushes for. I told her they were for dental hygiene. She looked horrified. Later, I caught her trying to brush the armor's inner gears with one. By the time the outer plating was aligned and the power core calibrated, we were halfway through my week's supply of thermal snack bars, and I was starting to forget that she was a mystery at all. She laughed once when I accidentally turned on her suit's external voice amp and shouted directly into my own ear. "Welcome, Commander." It blared, nearly rupturing my brain. I swore, dropped my wrench, and accused the suit of attempted murder. "That's not the assassination protocol," she said dryly. "You'd know." "I think I do now," I muttered, ears still ringing. Eventually, she tested the arm servos, rotating her shoulder. "Functional," she said. "Still got a little warp on the left thigh plate," I noted, "probably from the impact." "I wasn't shot down," she said too quickly. "Didn't say you were." I landed urgently. Right like I urgently landed in a tax office once. Same vibe. She gave me a look, not angry, not amused either, more like calculating. Then, without warning, she stood. The armor hissed softly as it sealed. She looked taller now, lithe and lethal, like someone used to commanding attention, or battleships. "I owe you a debt, Wren of Oris 9. "Cool, put it on my tab." Then she reached behind her collar and pressed something. The armor shimmered and revealed a crest, one I recognized from hollows, from history files, from those political drama vids my ex used to binge. "Royal. High House. Thalassari Crown. Princess Verali's K," she said. "Second daughter of the Golden Throne. You've just repaired the armor of a fugitive heir." I blinked slowly. "Okay," I said after a long moment. "But does that mean you're still cool splitting the cost of snacks?" Princess or not, she still didn't know how to use a toaster. On the morning after her dramatic royal confession, delivered with all the weight of someone admitting they'd stolen, the last slice of cake Vera stood in my cramped little kitchen, glaring at the appliance like it had personally insulted her ancestors. I leaned against the counter, chewing the remains of a protein bar, and watched her slide another slice of synth bread in upside down. "Why does it make that sound?" she asked as the coils inside hissed. "It's heating. That's its job." "It sounds like a wounded creature trying to summon help." "That's just the spirit of breakfast." She folded her arms. "Do your appliances all suffer like this?" "Only the ones that work." The toaster gave a wheeze and spat her bread out with the urgency of a warp core discharge. It ricocheted off the cabinet and landed on the floor with a sad little flop. She stared down at it. "I think it's rebelling." "Congratulations. You've just experienced what every human faces before 9 a.m. She bent down, picked up the bread, and took a bite like someone expecting to be poisoned. I sipped lukewarm synthcaf and gave her a long look. The armor, now fully repaired, was stacked neatly on the far wall. She wasn't wearing it. She was dressed in one of my old work shirts, rolled up at the sleeves, with her long ears poking through hastily cut holes in the collar. There was something unsettlingly casual about seeing a space princess dressed like a junior mechanic. "Are you planning to leave?" I asked, watching her expression carefully. She chewed. "Eventually." "Well, that's specific." She shrugged. "I need to be cautious. If my family learns I've survived, they'll send more than bounty hunters." I blinked. "Wait, hold up, your own family." She hesitated. "Then, there was a misunderstanding about the line of succession." "That sounds like a polite way to say someone tried to vaporize you." "They tried twice." "Ah, functional family dynamics, got it." She reached for my only clean cup, filled it with caf, and sat across from me at the table like this was normal. Like royal fugitives made a habit of hanging out in greasy workshops with low-rent humans and murdery toasters. "What exactly did you do to tick them off?" I asked, voice light. She stared into her mug. I disagreed. "With everything." "Okay, sure, that's relatable. But did you have to steal a diplomatic war suit in the process? I didn't steal it, I requisitioned it, which legally I had the authority to do. Says the princess who didn't tell me she was a princess until after I welded her leg plates back together. She met my gaze, and for a moment, something warm flickered behind those sharp alien eyes. Would you have helped me if I had told you? I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe I would have charged more. She laughed quietly but real. The first time I'd heard it not followed by a veiled threat. Later, we worked together on the hover cart. Mine had been half-functional since last summer's coolant leak disaster, and she claimed to know a thing or two about propulsion arrays. Watching her bend over the chassis, arguing with my diagnostic drone about circuit logic, was like seeing royalty attempting a school science project. The drone kept chirping insults in binary light, and she kept responding in formal thalassari, which, according to the translator, involved a lot of metaphors about dishonorable fungus. By mid-afternoon, she had rerouted the power couplings and boosted output by 20%. Then the cart immediately zipped forward, crashed into a pile of engine blocks, and burst into light blue flame. Well, she said, brushing soot off her cheek, that was unexpectedly kinetic. I'll add it to my list of heroic death options, I muttered. Death by royal tinkering. Right next to, accidentally hugged a bounty droid. We sat under the half-collapsed awning outside my shop as the twin moons of Horus 9 rose, faint, pinkish shadows in the dust-heavy sky. Vera was eating another thermal snack bar, though she did it like someone trying to decode alien cuisine. She kept staring at it between bites. Do all your food items come in foil tubes? Only the good stuff. She looked skeptical. This tastes like processed soil. High in minerals, I said, and nostalgia. There was a long pause, the kind that settles in when the laughter dies but the comfort lingers. I found myself looking at her profile, the way her long ears angled gently, catching the dusty wind like biological antennae. She was beautiful, sure, but it was more than that. There was a strength there and a kind of fatigue you don't get from just a crash landing. The kind of weight you carry when your enemies wear your family's face. What are you going to do now? I asked. Wait, she said. See if the bounty signals fade, regroup, maybe gather allies. In my shop. Temporarily. I sighed. You're aware my most advanced defense system is a vacuum cleaner with delusions of grandeur, right? She tilted her head. Is that the one that attacked my foot this morning? I think it was trying to knight you. I considered vaporizing it. Please don't, it gets very emotional. She smiled, faint, tired but real. That night after she'd gone back to the guest cot in the back room and I was elbow-deep in a busted Grav brew filter, I caught myself whistling. Something light, old earth tune. And for a moment, I forgot that I was a nobody on a forgotten moon, and she was a royal fugitive with a galaxy gunning for her. For a moment, we were just two people fixing things. And that somehow felt more dangerous than anything else. I woke up to the smell of ozone, fried circuits, and someone swearing in 3 different languages, none of which were mine. The first 2 were thalassari, and something I didn't recognize, all lyrical and sharp. The third was definitely toaster-based, coming from my diagnostics unit, which was making increasingly unhelpful beeping noises as it backed itself into a corner. I stumbled out of my bunk and into the workshop, rubbing sleep from my eyes and mumbling, "Tell me nothing's on fire." "Nothing important," Vera said, standing ankle-deep in tangled wiring and holding what looked like a half-dismantled stealth field emitter. "Just your emergency beacon system." My what? It was broadcasting a Class B pulse. I deconstructed it. You what? It's not sending any more signals, if that helps. That beacon was part of my emergency alert grid. Yes, which someone could have triangulated. You're welcome. I built that grid from scratch. It was made from an old shuttle navcore and half a blender. She looked at the smoking remnants in her hand and said, without irony, "That explains a lot." I sighed and flopped down into the nearest chair. You know, There's a very thin line between saving someone and just aggressively renovating their life. I didn't come here to renovate anything, just to survive. Well, you're succeeding. My systems are dying so yours can live. It's like a tragic romantic epic, except with more static discharge. She glanced at me sidelong. You're being dramatic again. I'm always dramatic when people blow up my stuff. To her credit, she did look guilty. A little, though that might have just been the scorch marks on her cheek. Later, when I'd talked myself into being calm and she'd promised not to improve any more of my security systems, we sat in the shop's back room with a cup of recaf and a box of emergency snack pouches. Vera peeled hers open cautiously like it might explode. She'd clearly never encountered chocolate mousse paste before. You know, I said between bites, you could just tell me the rest. The rest of what? Why you're really here. What happened with your family, what's chasing you. I told you. You told me they tried to kill you. That's not a story, that's the trailer for a story. She didn't answer at first. She just looked down into the plastic pouch, swirling its contents as though hoping to find an excuse in the puree. Finally, she said, Thalassari succession is not as orderly as you humans might think. There are traditions, trials, agreements made in blood and holograms. Sounds festive. My sister was chosen to rule. She wanted peace. I didn't think peace with certain sectors was wise. And you said so. I demonstrated so, in public. Classic galactic faux pas. There was a vote, an inquest, she won. I didn't accept the outcome. Which brings us to the part where they launched missiles at you. I only barely dodged the last one. I whistled. Family reunions must be tense. She laughed, a short burst of sound that surprised both of us. You really think humor fixes everything, don't you? I think if I stop cracking jokes, I'll remember I'm harboring a fugitive royal with enough firepower in her armor to atomize my entire moon. My armor's in storage mode. That's what worries me. The door console blinked red suddenly and we both tensed. I stood, crossed the floor, and tapped the interface. Someone's here, I said. Vera stood. Bounty hunter. Could be a courier. With a stealth ship and a cloaked signature. I mean maybe a very shy courier. We peered at the monitor together. The incoming craft was small, fast, and armed with enough weapons to qualify as a mobile argument. It didn't transmit any ID, just a blank anonymous ping. Vera's voice was low. They've found me. I blinked. Are you sure? Maybe they're here for my muffins. I've been experimenting with banana flavor lately. They've locked targeting. Get down. We dove behind the bench just as the first blast hit. It didn't strike us directly, but the shockwave cracked the outer dome and knocked over 3 shelves, including the one with my collection of vintage thermal regulators. A small one rolled past me, still cheerfully blinking the word "stay cool" as if unaware of the apocalypse outside. They're not here to talk, I shouted, unnecessarily. Then we won't talk, Vera growled, already moving for the armor case. It hissed open as she approached like it recognized her pulse. Plates folded and locked around her piece by piece until she stood again not just as Vera, the mysterious woman who mocked my toaster, but as something regal, powerful, and unmistakably dangerous. She glanced at me, stay down. That's rich, I muttered, grabbing a plasma cutter. You're wearing a suit forged in Royal Warforges. I've got a tool that barely heats soup. She crouched near the blast door. That's still more than most. The next wave hit harder. The roof supports groaned, and 2 light fixtures collapsed in a dramatic attempt to ruin my insurance rating. Vera lunged out, her armor shielding her as she returned fire. But not to kill, she was disabling expertly. Her blasts targeted propulsion coils and sensor relays. This wasn't revenge, it was strategy. Do all your royal fights involve this much finesse? I asked from behind a crate. I had just finished reattaching the antenna array to the roof. An act involving 3 near-death experiences and 1 unfortunate encounter with a sarcastic pigeon drone. When Vera emerged from the workshop, still in full armor but without the helmet. Her hair had picked up a line of soot from crawling under the blast console earlier, and she hadn't noticed. She looked like a Royal War statue who'd been through a paintball tournament. "You should rest," I said, wiping grease from my forehead and gesturing toward the half-rebuilt bench outside. She shook her head. "Can't. I rerouted the ship's distress logs. The moment someone decrypts what that bounty hunter transmitted, more will follow. We have, at best, 2 days. 2 days? You know, some people spend their long weekends relaxing. You ever tried a hammock?" "Hammocks don't stop orbital strikes. You're not using the right kind of hammock." She smirked, then walked over to the bench and sat with a slow, deliberate grace. Royalty was always dramatic, even when exhausted. "I've been thinking," she said. "That's never a good sign." She ignored me. "If they send another team, we can't keep playing defense. Your workshop's not built for siege warfare." "Speak for yourself. I've got a mop that's won 4 bar fights." She gave me a long, dry look, then nodded at the scattered crates of parts nearby. "We need to turn this place into something they don't expect. A trap. A statement." "Vera," I said carefully, "you do know this is my garage, right? If we make a statement, it's going to include a lot of duct tape and sarcasm." "That's the best kind," she said, standing. I didn't ask how she managed to look regal while holding a welding torch. Some things defy physics. We spent the afternoon wiring old drone cores into motion sensor minds. She suggested a neural feedback loop using the spare gravity plates from the hovercart wreckage. I suggested putting googly eyes on the minds to make them seem less intimidating. We compromised. Now they looked adorably threatening. Later, I pulled out an old voice amplifier we'd salvaged from a derelict party barge. With a few tweaks, it now emitted a very convincing warning: highly unstable romantic tension detected when tripped. Vera raised an eyebrow. I shrugged. Humor is a weapon, too. I thought this was a science-based defense. Science and nonsense, that's our edge. By evening, we had the outer perimeter laced with defense nodes, 6 decoy heat signatures, and one very confused cleaning bot that now thought it was the base commander. It kept giving orders to a mop. We took a break under the cracked awning, watching the dusk creep in. The twin moons were high, one pale, the other flushed red with dust. Vera leaned back, her armored legs stretched out, expression unreadable. "Your world is strange," she said. "Thanks, we aim to disappoint." "No, I mean it's unpolished, but sincere, like it was never meant to impress anyone, just be." "Yeah, well, we can't all be space empires with golden hover palaces." She looked at me, quiet for a while. Then she said, "Do you ever regret not being born into something bigger?" I thought about it. The question hit me somewhere behind the ribs. "Sometimes," I said. "But then I remember I get to eat cold noodles in peace, without anyone trying to marry me off to a planetary duke." She laughed, which made me smile, which made her stop laughing, which made things briefly awkward. After a pause, she said, "There was a time when I thought I'd be queen. Not because I wanted power, but because I thought I could protect people better than anyone else. Let me guess, that opinion didn't go over well." "My sister said I lacked patience. My advisors said I lacked subtlety." "Well, you did dropkick a bounty hunter into a junk compactor." "That was subtle." We sat there for a while, the silence not uncomfortable. There was a faint breeze through the ruins, and somewhere my prototype synthbird was chirping a lullaby it had downloaded from a children's channel. It sounded slightly off-key, like a lullaby filtered through a bad dream. "I should leave soon," Vera said quietly. "If I stay, I draw fire here. You'll be caught in the line." I poked at a bent wrench. "That's not really new, is it? We've been in the line since you crash-landed." "Back then I thought I'd fix the armor and go. Now it's trickier." She nodded. "You ever think about not going back?" I asked. Her eyes shifted toward me, cautious. "And do what?" "Join a salvage crew, start a mechanic business, specialize in anti-imperial defense systems, and emotionally unstable droids." Her voice was soft. "Do you offer benefits?" "Unlimited sarcasm, occasional danger, extremely flexible lunch breaks. She didn't answer, but I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. The night passed quietly. No ships, no alarms, just a calm that felt less like peace and more like the universe catching its breath before another punch. The next morning I found her standing in the central bay, her armor-sealed helmet under one arm. "What's up?" I asked. She held out a device. Small, round, blinking blue. "It's a tracker," she said. "The bounty team left it. Hidden in your scrap pile." I frowned. "So they will be back." She nodded. "Soon." "What do we do?" She looked at me serious. "We go on the offensive." "I was afraid you'd say that. I need to leave a message. One the Crown can't ignore." A postcard with a plasma signature. She handed me a data chip. A transmission, proof of their illegal bounty operation. Names, codes, enough to make the other houses question everything. I turned it over in my fingers. "And how do we send this without getting blown up?" "We don't," she said. "I do. Vera, I started this. I end it, but I'll draw them out first here. Give them something to chase while you get this to the relay station on Iskar 7. I exhaled. That's a week's flight, in a ship that thinks turning left is a personal insult. "Then you'd better get started." I looked at her, at the way she stood, steady, armored, every inch the princess and the fighter. And I wanted to say a lot of things. That I didn't want her to go. That I didn't like the idea of being left behind. That her presence had made this place feel less like a workshop and more like a life. Instead, I said, "If you die, I'm keeping the armor." She smiled. "You wouldn't fit in it." We shook hands. Her grip was firm, warm even through the gloves. She turned toward her ship. And I was suddenly terrified that the next time I saw her, it would be through a galactic broadcast with a bounty notice flashing behind her name. But I pocketed the chip. Because when a princess trusts you with her last hope, you don't argue. You just run like hell and hope the stars owe you a favor. I was halfway through coaxing the sublight engines into functioning like they gave a single quantum ripple about anything when the ship's console blipped and announced, in a chipper synthetic voice, "Stabilizer integrity. 34%. Probable outcome of ignition, catastrophic loop death." "Wonderful," I muttered, smacking the side of the panel. "You're lucky I don't have time to rewire your personality chip into a coffee machine." The ship wheezed. That might have been agreement. Or defiance. It was hard to tell with outdated tech. The route to Iskar 7 was a mess of asteroid drift fields and nebular static, and of course I couldn't take the direct jump without risking a scan from anyone looking for rogue data couriers with fantastic hair and a royal data chip in their boot. I had hidden it inside my left boot, by the way, because no one ever searches the boots. That's just science. 3 days into the flight, I got lonely. I tried talking to the nav AI, but it kept looping back to a conversation we'd had about weather patterns on Mars. I began to miss Vera, not just her sarcasm or her tendency to break my appliances, but her certainty. The way she moved through the world like it was hers to wrestle into shape. Me. I fixed broken junk and made bad jokes. But then I remembered how she looked at me before leaving. Not like I was a background player, not like I was a distraction from her mission, but like I mattered, like the human with grease under his fingernails had somehow, impossibly, become part of her fight. And I didn't want to let her down. The relay station loomed into view like a giant satellite having an existential crisis. Bent panels, flickering lights, a sign that read authorized personnel only in a font someone had clearly drawn with a laser pen. I docked, got clearance from a very bored customs droid named Plim, and made my way to the comms core. The technician looked at me, looked at the chip and said, "You sure you want this broadcast on all sovereign channels?" "Positive." "Because once this hits, the empires will respond." "They already are," I said, remembering the fire in Vera's voice. "This is just letting everyone else catch up." He slid the chip in, typed something, then turned back with a nod. "It's done." And that was it. The message was out. I had no idea if it would make a difference. No idea if it would trigger a war, a coup, or a very strongly worded diplomatic memo. All I knew was that I'd held up my end. And then I waited. For a week, I fixed a coffee pump on Deck 3, played a few games of zero-G checkers with Plim who cheated with magnetic pads, watched an ancient sitcom about sentient vacuum cleaners in love. No word, not from Vera, not from the stars. Until one morning, as I sat with a lukewarm bowl of nutrient mush and considered whether I just doomed an entire galactic bloodline, the intercom blared. Docking alert. Unregistered Thalassari cruiser inbound. Repeat, unregistered. I was out of my seat before the mush hit the floor. The ship that descended into the station bay was sleek, dark, regal, and unmistakably royal. Vera stepped out wearing something halfway between armor and diplomatic robes. Her long ears were tucked beneath a silver hood, but I'd know that posture anywhere, strong, defiant, tired in the way people get when they've been carrying a galaxy on their back. She walked straight up to me, no words, just reached out and punched me in the shoulder. "Ow," I said, "nice to see you too. You uploaded the chip." "I did. They tried to intercept it." "They didn't." "My sister has called for an emergency summit. She can't ignore the evidence. The other houses are furious." "You're welcome," I said, rubbing my shoulder. "Now do I get a title like Ren the Reckless or Sir Renchalat?" She looked me dead in the eye. "You get this." Then she kissed me. Not a soft, polite diplomatic peck. No, this was the kind of kiss that rewires your brain and makes your boots feel half a size too small. When she pulled back, I was pretty sure I was glowing. "I'm not going back to the throne," she said. "You're not. My sister can rule. She's good at it. I'm not. I'm better at starting fires and dodging laser bolts. And kissing humble mechanics. Also that. So what now?" She smiled. "You have a ship, I have experience. Together we're going to fix things. Like interstellar justice. Like starcruisers, and maybe justice on the weekends. Do I still get flexible lunch breaks? You get hazard pay." And that was how it ended. Not with a crown, not with a war, but with a promise. We left Iskar 7 that same night. Didn't have a plan, didn't need one. She sat in the co-pilot seat, feet on the dash, arguing with the AI about fuel efficiency. I set course for the next system that needed help, repairs, or maybe just someone to remind it that not all problems needed blasters. And as the stars stretched out in front of us, I realized I had changed. Not because I'd helped a princess,